Happy New Year. It's a new year, the city council is back and at it, and they definitely hit the ground running. So at the January 15th city council meeting, council members took actions on 870 pieces of legislation. This includes 235 pieces of non-routine pieces. So what all is in this 870 piece bundle of work that our city council took action on the 15th. We're going to dive into that. I'll give you guys a high level overview in this video, but my plan really is to break down each action individually to really get a sense of how that impacts us, the city's residents. In terms of what committees spoke at the city council and the committees that took actions, Committee on Finance, Committee on Budget and Government Operations, Committee on Contracting Oversight and Equity, Committee on Economic Capital and Technology Development, Committee on Housing and Real Estate, Committee on License and Consumer Protection, Committee on Pedestrian and Traffic Safety, Committee on Police and Fire, Committee on Public Safety, Committee on Transportation and Public Way, and the Committee on Zoning, Landmarks, and Public Standards all spoke and took action at the January 15, 2025 City Council. Obviously, there's a great deal that they touched on, more so than we're going to get into in this one video. But to give you a sense of what they discussed, I wanted to but really highlight about 5 big pieces that you probably have been hearing on the news, local news, reading local newspapers that were discussed in the last city council. So, Committee on Finance took action on potholes, property and vehicular damage claims and ordinances. So a lot of these are a lot of claims that Chicago residents made with regards to property damage or vehicular damage. Actions were taken on those.
Today's agenda, City Council also approving $35 million in cash settlements in half a dozen wrongful convictions and lawsuits. A $17.5 million payout to a wrongfully convicted man victimized by CPD detective Reynaldo Guevara. Another $8.7 million to another wrongfully convicted man falsely accused of murdering a 6-year-old Southside boy. A $7.5 million settlement for the lawsuit against corrupt ex-CPD officer Ronald Watts, and $4.5 million awarded to the estate of mother of 3 Lacaselle Thomas, killed by a driver fleeing police in 2021.
There were amendments allowing and disallowing liquor licenses in certain parts of the city. There are also issuance of bonds to finance improvements in city infrastructure. So these are going to be kind of long-term investments in the city in the coming years. There are also amendments of amendments of annual appropriations and ordinances to transfer funds within Committee on Immigrant and Refugee Rights. And moving on, we have amendments on municipal code prohibiting sale, barter, or exchange of cannabis, hemp products within defined downtown areas. Again, there's another hot topic that has been in the news recently, and a committee took action on that as well.
Issue of the sale of hemp products to residents under the age of 21 was brought before us. These products have been found to target young people, and as a father and former educator, the health and safety of young people is paramount to me and to this administration. We thank Vice Mayor Burnett for his leadership on this important issue to make sure Chicago leads on banning the sale of these products to our children and our young people. While this ordinance was sent to the Rules Committee by Alderman Lopez, we are hopeful that the City Council will stand with the young people of Chicago and pass this critical step of regulating hemp, while we continue to work diligently with public health and safety experts on developing a comprehensive regulatory framework that centers safety and equity.
The last big item here was regards to so there were talks of a default 30 mile per hour speed limit being reduced to 25 miles per hour. Chicago alderman on Wednesday put the brakes on this effort to lower the Chicago default speed limit from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour, calling off plans for a city council vote. So that didn't even make the floor for a vote.
Meanwhile, the council was also expected to vote on a measure that would have reduced Chicago's official speed limit on surface streets from 30 miles per hour down to 25. Similar proposals have already been approved in other major cities where proponents say it makes pedestrian safety a priority. The vote was delayed to allow more discussion on the legislation, including the cost of changing all the speed limit signs across the city.
So that kind of rounds out like the five to six major points that you probably have already heard on Chicago local news or Chicago newspapers. Some other matters that were discussed and actions that were taken during the council meeting includes mayor's latest appointments. He made a slew of appointments. There were a sale of some city bonds, judgments on settlements as well. The Inspector General's report on zoning reclassification. There were also zoning reclassifications, so the Inspector General's report, and then there were also separate zoning reclassifications. Actions were taken on those two items. As I mentioned earlier, there was some sale of city-owned property. There were also honorary street naming designations. So the next, few months, you'll be seeing some new honorary street signs on some of the popular, if it's in your neighborhood, some popular neighborhood streets. Moving on, we have zoning reclassification maps, issuance of bonds to finance improvements to city infrastructure, and then we also have transferring of funds within other wards. So these are specifically wage allowance accounts where the transferring of funds is taking place. We also have amendments regarding several other matters, and then we have acquisition of various properties for the Englewood Nature Trail project.
For years, the 606 Trail has been a popular destination for runners, bikers, and anyone who enjoys the outdoors on the city's northwest side.
And now something similar is coming to the south side. Today, state and city leaders announced a $20 million federal grant to support the Englewood Nature Trail. That project will convert nearly 2 miles of an abandoned railway corridor into a walkable green space. Now, according to this rendering from the city, that trail will run parallel to 58th Street from Damon and Halsted. That is where we find CBS 2's Chris Habermel up in Chopper 2. Chris, not much to look at now, is it?
Well, there's a lot to work with out here, Marie and Jim. Pennsylvania Railroad had this dating back to 1917. It's been disused since the 1960s, and you can see the result of that. It's all grown over. There's old growth trees and all sorts of stuff that has to be done down here. So $20 million is going to go a long way to revitalizing this 1.75 long corridor. In 2018, the city acquired this from the Norfolk Southern that actually owns it right here. So this is part of a citywide plan to revitalize that green space, and the project is intended to be the focus of a community-led green infrastructure movement. So there's a lot to work with here. It's breathing life into this dilapidated space. It's grade separated. It sits up on a berm, and it crosses streets on 26 different viaducts. Now, once this is done, this is going to add an extra 1.75 miles of walking space. It's also going to have 9 different safe entrances to it. So this is going to go a long way to help revitalize this neighborhood between Englewood and West Englewood. Live down south, I'm Chris Habermel, CBS 2 News.
I see the potential. It's going to be great. Thank you.
So that's kind of your high-level overview of what was discussed, actions that were taken. Like I said earlier in this series of videos, I'm really going to try and unpack as many of these actions as I can to really get a better sense of what was discussed and what this means for us in the city of Chicago.